Man, I'm so glad to be back. I've been with you before, but you are growing. It's been so cool to look around the room and see. It used to be configured a little different, and you've just had to make more space, and that's a great thing because I remember in my beginning days when I visited a place where I watched people. I think I gawked at people. I wasn't actually watching. Anybody like to people watch? Anybody a people watcher? Like, I travel a lot. I love to people watch. But I wasn't people watching. I was actually people gawking. Like, I was off to the side of the room. My buddy had taken me. And I was like, what are they doing? What are they doing? You know, I saw people. I was watching people. And it's like, they act like he's real. Like he's alive or something. I mean, my mind was just trying to take all of this in, and my buddy kind of nudged me like, stop gawking. But I couldn't quite take it in. Even when I went home that night, like, what was that? Like, those people act like they're having a relationship with a living being. That was the beginning of my search, my quest. Every summer, we have something in the Rocky Mountains called Deep Camp. And you know, if you've read the Bible, because I started reading the Bible to try to figure it all out, one of the things, in addition to being baptized, that Jesus did was Luke 5:16 says he often slipped away to just be alone with God, to just grow and be with God. So I started doing that. I read it and I started doing it. And one of the things we do at Forge is we provide an opportunity for people to get out of the city. That's kind of a good thing every now and then. And to get up into the mountains where there's fresh air and a little less noise, a little less concrete, and just be able to drink in the presence of God in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. So David and his family come, Pastor David, and I think Hannah's the greeter. I mean, she just walks around and gets to know everybody. They come from all over the nation, other parts of the world, but it is an open opportunity for you. You might like to know about it. It's on the table back here, Forge Equipping Programs, Deep Camp, 5 days in the month of June. And Pastor David tells me that in the summertime, you don't have a lot of programming. This is a perfect opportunity for you to go, I want to get... Well, in fact, that's what we're going to talk about this morning. So take four fingers and just put 4 fingers up with me. 4 fingers up, because Mike, who's running sound, said, now, do you have an outline for the screen? And I said, no, I got an easy way for us to remember this morning. So I want you to know that the passage of Scripture is in James 4. James chapter 4. Can you say James chapter 4? Yep. So now you know where it's found. You can check me out. And in James chapter 4, there's 4 words, and we're going to say them together because I'm going to help you memorize this verse. And James chapter 4 just says in verse 8, those of you who are looking it up, in verse 8 it says, look at this, come near to God. Come on, 4 fingers up, let's do it together. It says, come near to God. Let me hear you say, you got. I know this is a lot of coordination. Hopefully you've had your second cup of coffee. Are you ready for this? Come on. We're all going to look ridiculous together. Come on. 4 fingers up. And we're going to say, James chapter 4, verse 8 says, come near to God. One more time. Come near to God. You just said a scripture verse right out of the Word of God. It's come near to God. Now we're going to break that down. Because one of the things that I started recognizing early in my journey was that the first thing, here's your first finger, put your first finger up, your first thing is you want to engage Jesus. That's what was changing people's lives. As I started reading the Bible, I started recognizing that people who engaged Jesus, in fact, anybody see the movie that hit theaters a couple years ago called Jesus Revolution? Anybody see that movie? Some of you saw that movie. Really cool movie. And you often would see people going like this to each other, like, yep, it's all about Jesus. Number one. Jesus is my number one. And people would do this number one, Jesus. Come near to God, and Jesus is number one. The first thing you want to remember is you want to choose to engage Jesus. Not just know who he is, read a little bit about him. You want to choose to engage Jesus. Now let me tell you what the word engage means, because it didn't used to be a part of the English language. In spite of the fact that there's gals out there that like to let you know when they got, what? Engaged. Did you know that word was not in the English language in the early 1900s? In fact, it never became an English word until 1946. During World War II, We were watching a lot from a distance across the ocean, and what we were learning is that there were people who weren't just watching. And that's what I was doing in that room that night. I was just watching. What are they doing? There were people who weren't just watching. They were what they referred to in the French language, they were engaging. Now, we didn't know what that word meant, so we asked the French Resistance people, this French Resistance during World War II, what is this these little old ladies would carry purses around with information in it. Little children on bicycles where they'd get near where, like they were in danger zone. They were getting up close to where things needed to transpire. They didn't want to watch from a distance. They're in the middle of it. They're gonna engage the action. And finally, we started saying, wow, so this word engagement means you get near, you get up close, you get involved. He said, oh, yes, that's what engage means. And then some dudes who came back from World War II said, I'm going to engage the girl I want to marry, So I asked some older people, what did you used to call it? They said, oh, we got hitched. That's what they said. We got hitched. We're going to get married. But in 1946 and going forward, we were going to get engaged, which meant we were going to get near to one another. We were going to commit. We were going to get up close. You want to choose to engage Jesus. To engage Jesus. About that same time during World War II, there was a cartoon strip. I doubt that there's anybody in this room old enough to remember a cartoon strip called Lil Abner. Has anybody heard of the Oh, some of you are going, yes, you do. So there was a cartoon strip named Lil Abner. My parents showed me excerpts from it. And there was an old dude in that who was a father, and he had waited and waited. Nobody was taking a look at his young daughter named Sadie Hawkins. Now, Sadie was truthfully, like at least the cartoonist made her the ugliest human you'd ever seen. I mean, she was just as homely could be. And in this cartoon strip, this father who wanted his daughter to get hitched, to get engaged, finally was frustrated that nobody was paying attention to his precious daughter, who was quite homely. So he got his gun out and he walked around and he told all the young lads who were all in the area, I'm going to declare that tomorrow is Sadie, his daughter's name, Sadie Hawkins Day. And she's going to run after y'all. And whichever one of you guys she catches, you're hers. And with his gun, he said, and I'll make sure. So in the cartoon strip, it's everybody's, the whole nation, our nation was reading this cartoon strip. It was released day by day, week after week. And what's going to happen? They'd see Sadie running after guys, and guys trying to figure out what to do. And in fact, when she finally caught a guy, all the ladies who were following the cartoon strip in our nation went, ooh, we kind of like this idea where the women are in charge. Men have been in charge too long. There ought to be a day where we're in charge. So they declared something. Do you know this history? They declared something called Sadie Hawkins Day. And Sadie Hawkins Day was, and they'd have Sadie Hawkins races, was where the women were in charge for a day in our nation. And they would have Sadie Hawkins races. And the women would line up behind the men. I know this because my parents, I'm the result of a Sadie Hawkins race. On their college campus, it was Sadie Hawkins Day. And my dad tells me there was a guy who was an athlete who was nervous wreck because the homeliest, ugliest girl on their campus had her eyes set for him. She'd even told him in the cafeteria, I'm going to be running after you. And so he figured out when he lined up in the guys' line where she was, and he got as far away from her as he could. But what he didn't notice was that she had bought new running shoes. She had brand new running shoes. She was a woman on a mission. And when she saw he moved, she moved in the ladies' line. She's right behind him. My dad said he looked over and this Don Simpson was sweating by this point. He was a nervous wreck. He was an athlete, but this girl was fast and she's got new running shoes. And he said at the sound of the gun, Don ran as fast as he could, and he had an idea. He saw a distant tree, a tall tree, and he was a good climber. So he ran toward that tree and climbed the tree as fast as he could, all the way to the very top limb, holding on to that limb, feeling like this is success. When this gal named Betty comes running up to the tree, huffing and puffing, she sees him up the tree, and it hit her. And she just sat down. She saw him holding on to that limb up there, and she said, "Don Simpson, you're going to get tired eventually. I'm not going anywhere. Pretty soon, I don't care how long it takes, you'll be mine." They said a crowd gathered around watching this thing play out. Minute by minute, hour by hour, till finally Dawn came down the tree. But my parents said they didn't really get to see the whole thing playing out because my dad had noticed my mom wasn't set to run in the ladies' line. And he was hoping she'd run after him. He'd even positioned himself right in front of her. And she wasn't paying any attention at all. In fact, she tells me she had no intention of running. She'd grown up in an orphanage, and she didn't have any intention of anyone feeling overlooked or undervalued in that moment and in that day. She didn't really care for this thing. When all of a sudden he said, "Psst, psst." She said, I looked over and he said, "Are you going to run?" She said, "No, I'm not." "Psst, why?" "I have heart problems." Well, she didn't really have heart problems. She was just trying to think of something, and her heart was hurting in this moment because she knew what it was like year after year to be left out at the orphanage and never adopted until she was 15 years old. Year after year after year being overlooked and undervalued. She said, I just couldn't rise to be a part of this. When all of a sudden she said one more, "Psst, psst. If you run, I'll let you catch me." "If you run, I'll let you catch me." She kind of sheepishly moved up behind him in the girls' line. And she said, when the sound of the gun went off, I said, "Mom, how far did you have to run?" She said, "I didn't. It was 2 steps and I had him." What you need to know is that when you choose to engage Jesus, he's saying, "Psst, psst, if you'll run, I'll let you catch me." He wants to be caught. I said to my dad, 2 steps. He said, "Oh, she was the only one I wanted." He watches you from afar. He longs after you. He loves you already. He's waiting for you to what? Come near to God. He's waiting for you to come near to God. Choose to engage Jesus. There was another gal who sat. You find this story in Luke's Gospel, chapter 10. And there was another gal who was running all around doing stuff. But this gal named Mary just sat up close, coming near to Jesus. So near to Jesus, her sister Martha said to Mary in Luke chapter 10, "Martha, Martha, Martha, Jesus, get her to do something." And Jesus looked at Mary and said, "Mary has chosen what is better. To come near. To come near." She was sitting at Jesus' feet. You and I, when we choose to engage Jesus, to come near to God, that's what Jesus said. It was the word he used, "Mary has chosen what is better," is the exact original language word. If you were to walk up and down, have you ever done this? Walk up and down a buffet table, and you're just looking at, because you know you only got 8 or 10 inches on the plate, and you choose what's the best. That's what I want. When he said Mary has chosen what is better, he was saying in Luke chapter 10, choose to engage Jesus. If you were to ask my beautiful wife who's watching our grandchildren today, if you were to ask my wife, who is Dwight in your life? Because we're crazy in love. We've been married 38 years and we are still in love with each other. We were just talking about it last night, like, are we the luckiest people on the planet? We have each other. But if you were to ask my wife, who is Dwight to you? She would say, he's my number 1 second love. And you might say, he's your what? Because we learned a long time ago, when you choose Jesus as your number one, first love, you have a whole lot more to give each other. Because you get from him what you don't have, and I can give to her. It's amazing that one of the best decisions you'll ever make for your children, for your grandchildren, for your best friend, for your spouse, for anybody in your world, the best decision you'll ever make is to choose to engage Jesus as your number one, first love. I'm her number one, second love. But he's her number one, first love. And we'll say it to each other often to reconfirm that the best way I'm going to be the husband she needs me to be, the father, the grandfather, is to choose Jesus as my number one, first love, and to come near to him. My son, when he was growing up, he was crazy about his dad. And one day I'd gotten back from a trip. I travel and speak in different parts around the world and across the nation. And my son came racing up the stairs as fast as he could, jumped around the corner and came in the master closet and said, Dad, oh, Dad, now that you're home, everything's better. And I said, well, son, I appreciate that, but I'm sure everything was fine before Dad got home. No, Dad, it's always better when you're here. And I said, well, son, I'm really glad. I'm really glad you feel that way. And my little guy started walking out the closet, and then he said, Dad. I said, yes, son? Dad, I'm trying to love Jesus more than I love you. And I said, well, son, that's the idea. That's the idea. Because, son, Dad won't always get to be there for you. There will come days that I'll wish I could be there, but I won't be able to be there. As my son grew older, age 17, I'll never forget when I was getting ready to leave his room one night after we'd said goodnight to one another, and I'm exiting his bedroom door, and he said, Dad, just a minute. Hey, Dad, I want you to know, I have my own relationship with Jesus, Dad, and it's close. And I love him more than I love you. And I said, well, son, that's the idea. When my son went off to boot camp with the Marines, when my son began to engage a lot of hard things, when he was halfway around the world in dangerous situations, I knew, because he chose to engage Jesus as his number one first love, that who he needed with him, who would never leave, never forsake him, he had chosen. See, Jim Cymbala said it this way. He said, you always are either drawing near or falling away. There's no holding pattern. And you want to continually choose to come near to God. Continually choose to, say it with me, come near to God. Be a mistake to have a head full of information and busy hands and feet, but have an empty heart. I want to come near to God. Pastor David, would you just come this way for a minute? I just want to demonstrate an average day in the life of. So an average day in the life of, so I get up, my alarm goes off, and anybody like to hit a snooze? Like I hit the snooze, and 8 minutes later it's going to go off again, and then, okay, now it's time. I don't have a third snooze. So okay. Oh no, what happened? It's daylight. Say, what in the world? Oh my word, I'm going to be late. And so I'm running out the door. Honey, I don't have time for breakfast. So sorry, I got to go. And then I make up time. Do traffic lights ever work for you? You know, they kind of never work, but on this occasion it works. And finally I go, I've made enough time. I could stop at Starbucks, and I really need some Java. So I stop at Starbucks, and there's my friends at Starbucks. And my friend tells me that, whoa, there's something really, that's rough. I didn't know that had happened. Oh, I'm sorry. Whoa, that's heavy. Oh, I gotta get to work. I gotta get to work on time. And so I'm racing to work, and I get to work, and here's my work friends, and we're having a good time talking. And all of a sudden, while we're at work, I see, oh, there he comes. I know it's all right. I can't stand that guy. Here he comes. Oh, work would be so much easier and so much better if he wasn't around. Oh. Hi. Hello. I get back to my desk and I'm working at my desk when all of a sudden I realize, oh, it's almost lunchtime. I can't wait for lunch because I get to be with my lunch friends we've set up a good lunch and we're having a great time over lunch and we're enjoying our food and having a great time. And you tell me something about, oh, I didn't know that was going on. Whoa, that's heavy. Whoa, man, dude, I'm so sorry. Whoa, well, I'll be thinking about you. I got to get back to work. And so I get back to work and then the afternoon goes by and it's, oh, wait, I'm going to hit the gym. I thought I was going to go to the gym. And I get to the gym and I'm here with my workout buddies and my workout buddies, come on, workout buddies, can you stand? And let's push some weights. And so we're pushing some weights and we're working out hard. When one of my buddies says, hey, I don't know. We don't have enough. We're not going to be pay our bills this month. And I'm going, man, dude, that's big stuff. Wow. Oh man, I'm sorry, dude. At least we're done working out, so it's time for me to get home. And I come to, hey, honey, I'm home. She got dinner ready. Oh, my wife's a great cook. And so we're eating dinner, and all of a sudden I said, hey, honey, I'm going to have to work tonight. I'm not going to be able to hang out. I've got a big meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I mean, it's about a promotion. And if I don't put the work in, I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal, honey. So I go to my home desk and I'm working here and I'm working on it. I'm starting to get nervous. You ever get anxious about it? Getting anxious, really anxious. Like 10 o'clock tomorrow, am I even going to be able to sleep tonight? Oh man, I mean, I've done all my work, but I don't know. This is huge. I'm going to need some help tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And that's when I turn and say, Jesus, I'm going to need you tomorrow. 10 o'clock tomorrow. I need you to be there. 10 o'clock tomorrow. Big meeting. I need you tomorrow. First conversation I've had with him today. He's been with me all day, as he said he would be. When Jesus said, I'll never leave you, I'll never forsake you. I'll be with you. I want to show you something. When you choose to engage Jesus, you do life, take that other finger and wrap it around the first finger. You do life with Jesus. You do life with Jesus. Put your first finger up. You want to engage Jesus and you want to do life with Jesus. Say the word with. You want to do life with Jesus. Jesus, I could have talked with you when I was talking with him. You were right there. Why didn't I pause and include you in that conversation? And when I was over here and I don't like that guy at work, why didn't I ask you to help me, pour your love into my heart by the Holy Spirit? Because you weren't far off. You weren't in a building. You were with me. Why didn't I ask you to help me? And when I was over here with my lunch friends and they were sharing a heavy thing with me, why didn't I say, hey, you guys, you comfortable if I just invite Jesus into our conversation? Why didn't I do that? Why? When I was at the gym and he was telling me he didn't know how they were going to pay, why didn't I include you? This is the way you want to do life with Jesus. Not only choose to come near to him and engage him, you want to do life with Jesus. Thank you, David. So when you read Acts 4, verse 13, you note takers, Acts 4, verse 13, and you learn about the disciples, that what marked them is that they'd been, yes, come on, let me hear you say it. They'd been what? With Jesus. Not watching him from a distance. Not hearing reports about him. They'd been with Jesus. And in fact, when cool stuff starts happening that you read about in the book of Acts, all the people got around and started trying to figure out how is all this happening? Like through them, they're just ordinary people. They haven't even been to school. They're not even schooled seminary people. Like they're just regular people like us, small business owners and regular people. Matthew's an accountant. Like accountants don't. Peter's just a fisherman. Like how does this happen? And in Acts chapter 4, verse 13, it says, what they finally deduced was these guys had been with Jesus. What's going to mark your life more than anything? In fact, some of you worry about, I want to be a better witness. Can I tell you what makes you a better witness? Is your witness. Your witness is what enables you to be a better witness. Your witness enables you to be a better witness because he's not distant somewhere. You're with him and he's with you. In fact, back on the table back there, I thought I put a sample in here, but maybe I don't. I've got free bookmarks back there that just says The greatest gift you will ever give this world is your intimacy with God. You want to take one of those with you to remind you. That's the greatest gift you're going to give your friend, your child, your spouse, a perfect stranger. The best gift you're going to give this world is your witness with him, your intimacy with him. Because as great as you are, and I like you a lot, as great as you are, the world doesn't need us, they need him. But the more we've been with him, the more he shows up everywhere we show up. That's why it says, how beautiful are the feet of those that bring good news in Romans chapter 10, verse 15. Because when you get up close to them, he's up close to them because you have come near to God. He's with you, and you're bringing him up close to them. The warmth of his presence, the kindness and the generosity of his love is with them because you're with him. So, let me review here. James chapter 4 is, can you say it with me? It's come near to God. Keep your fingers up. We want to choose to engage who? First finger. We want to choose to engage who? Jesus. And then we want to do life what? With Jesus. There's a third finger here. What is that third finger about? It's that your life is going to impact others. Your witness is going to be a witness more than you realize. Frank Kluwer got up in Warrnambool, Australia. Have you heard this story? It hit all the news outlets. He got up in Warrnambool, Australia, and it was a brisk morning, so he went back in the house and got a wool sweater and pulled on the wool sweater, and he went back out to get in his car and went, whoa, it was like windy, some of the winds that we get here, but in Australia, and so he went back in the house and got a nylon jacket and pulled it on over his wool sweater. He didn't think a thing about it. He just was going to stay warm. Some of you are committed to stay warm. I'm not going to be cold. So he didn't think about the fact that the nylon jacket and the wool sweater were interacting with each other as he was going about his business that morning. He had a lot of stops, a lot of errands. Some of you are like this. You make a list of all the places and things you're going to get done so you can conserve on gas and time. And so he's finally, late morning, he's been to 5 different stops. Late morning, he has stopped at the bank. He walks in the bank. True story, walks in the bank, and Frank Kluwer hears like snap, crackle, pop sounds. And people are turning, trying to figure out what these snap, crackle, pop sounds are. And he said he literally didn't realize they were coming from him. He walked up to the bank teller and did his transaction. And as he was walking out of the bank building in a bit of a hurry because he had a lunch appointment, someone noticed as he had walked out that there were footprints on the carpet where the carpet was actually smoldering. And one person went down to look at one of those footprints and it burst into flames where Frank had just left the bank building. He went to get in his car outside. And as he was moving his right foot over with the plastic mat, his foot stuck to the mat. And as he picked it up, it was melting underneath his foot. It freaked him out and he jumped out of the car and what's going on? And about that time, a fire truck, because they'd called 911 inside the bank building, a fire truck was arriving to investigate the potential of a fire in the bank building. When Frank yelled to one of the firemen, hey, something's wrong with my car. And so the fireman came over to the car, and the fireman had just been in the bank building and saw the footprints. Now he saw this footprint. They looked about the same size on the plastic mat inside Frank Kluwer's car. He raced over to the fire truck and pulled down a static electricity field meter that they kept on the fire truck and brought it over to Frank and held it up to Frank. And what he discovered was Frank was housing 40,000 volts of static electricity. His nylon jacket rubbing against his wool sweater had caused so much static electricity. They said when they got the nylon jacket off him, they hung it in the firehouse yard, and they said it was snap, crackling, and popping all night long out there in the fire yard. Somebody said to Frank, what you're thinking right now, how could you house 40,000 volts of static electricity and be completely unaware? And I would ask you, how is that possible? That you house the living, Shekinah, glorious presence of Jesus who you're with and would think that no other people will be affected? It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. When you are doing life with Jesus, He is going to house within you so much of the fruit of the Spirit written about in Galatians 5. There's going to be so much of his presence going on inside you and emanating through you that it's impossible that others will not be affected. When you choose to engage Jesus, when you do life with Jesus, you need to know others will be affected. Now here's the rest of the verse. Take your four fingers and now get your other four fingers out. Would you get your other four fingers out? Because some of you have read the whole verse in James chapter 4, verse 8. And some of you are worried about the little finger. Like, what's the little finger about? Well, because you feel so weak sometimes. You feel like, man, I feel weak. Well, can I show you how weakness becomes strong? Because you may feel like a little toothpick. But let me show you what happens when you come near to God. When you come near to God, he, the rest of verse 8 of chapter 4 says, he comes near to you. Look at the strength that happens. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. That's his promise. And when you are united with his strength, your weakness is made strong. I have a friend that says it's like you might feel like a toothpick, but you're a toothpick duct taped to a lead pipe. David, the psalmist, understood that when he was facing Goliath. He'd been overlooked, and some of us in this room have been, by parents who pronounced a parental verdict over your life, like you're worthless, you're never going to amount to anything, and you're the least of, and you felt that through your life, whether it came from educators or came from parents. And David knew that feeling. He'd been overlooked by his own dad, who, when there was an epic moment in their house and there's a prophet that comes to visit, and Jesse, David's dad, the psalmist who wrote all the Psalms, Jesse, David's dad, brings all the big brothers that he thinks are, they're the heroes of the family, the oldest Eliab and all the others. He brings them in, and the prophet does just something, and he doesn't even bring David into the room. David's out watching sheep. And finally, the prophet Samuel says, do you have any other boys? He said, well, yeah, I got one. He's the little guy. He's out watching sheep. Bring him in. And David began to learn, while he was overlooked by people, even in his own family, he began to learn when you come near to God, he will come near to you. And David began to become strong in the Lord. So much so that later on he goes to visit his brothers at a war scene, and there's a giant named Goliath, and David hears this giant, and by now David is so united with God. He's come near to God, and God's been coming near to him. He's been writing songs that we read in the Psalms, and he's got that strength, and he says, hey, somebody needs to take this giant down. And everybody, all the soldiers are saying, nobody can do that. But David kept talking with bravado. Why? Because he knew who his God was. And when he began to face Goliath, and Goliath said, I'm going to make mincemeat out of you, David said, no, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of a lion, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of a bear, the Lord will deliver me from you, Goliath. And that was the undoing of that giant, because David had learned what he wrote in Scripture. God is my strength. He is my power. And he makes my way perfect. If you and I will understand that it is not concepts, ideas, and information, it's a relationship that God desires. And he desires it because he wants to be your helper. He wants to be your source, your strength. You aren't alone. You're just pretending you're alone. You're ignoring the one who's with you. Will you be choosing him and engage him? Will you choose to be with him? Will you understand others are going to be affected? And when you feel weak, would you know when you come near to God, he will come near to you, and his strength will be made perfect in your weakness. Some of you, I would just love to come alongside and help. I've got a little card back there if you want to take one of these and just text me. I'd love to encourage you, but your knowledge, take one of those bookmarks with you today, is that the greatest gift you're going to give this world is your intimacy with God. It's the greatest gift you're going to give this world. As talented as you are, as maybe educated as you are, as great as you are, The world needs him. But the more we're with him, continually choosing to engage him, the more others will be the beneficiaries. And we will be strong, his strength made perfect. I wanted to close with a song that literally was written, portions of it, by the one who felt small and insignificant and weak until he came near to God and found his strength in his source. And as this song is playing, I want to encourage you inside your gut, your spirit, say, yes, God, yes, God, yes, God. And to celebrate that you're not alone. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Lord, I pray that as this song plays this morning, and as we contemplate that the smartest and best thing we can do in life is to choose to engage you, to do life with you, to know and trust that others will be impacted, that our greatest impact is our intimacy with you, 40,000 plus volts of true grace and power and love. And that when we get to the end of all we have, that's when we'll know that you are all we ever need. Thank you, God, that our hearts can be on fire, leading to lives on purpose, which means, Lord, that you can advance your kingdom every day, everywhere, through us, as your ordinary kingdom laborers who want to come near to you, God, and let you come near